and neat and regular and all that. These guys will kind of fill in and grow with it where they have the opportunity to grow. And they do give you a fairly long bloom period, about 2 months worth. So any questions? All right. Yes.
So my narrow-leaf sunflowers that are about 4 to 6 feet tall.
Yes.
Don't have the real narrow leaves. They have a fatter.
All right. Well, again.
So when I looked up online, the only one that I could find that has a fatter leaf is Helianthus resinosus. But it grows in the panhandle.
Yeah. Okay. Well, again, it's a case of plants can't read. Okay. Your narrow leaf sunflower doesn't know it's supposed to have narrow leaves. They can actually have fairly wide leaves, particularly if they're growing robustly.
Yes, they're growing robustly.
So you got 8 to 6 footers. Okay. Shrink them down to 2 or 3 footers, and your leaves might look.
Well, I do have some with the very narrow leaves as well.
Yeah, it's the old big nose, small nose argument. In other words, some people have big nose, some people have small nose, but we're all people. And so plants are the same way. Sometimes they have big leaves when they're supposed to have small leaves, another way around, but they're still the plant. So, okay. All right, any other questions? All right, thanks.
Thank you, Steve. So since we already covered our announcements from the email and all of that, we are now at the end of the announcements. We're going to do the plant drawing and take a very quick little break before we get to our featured speaker. But are there any questions from the floor? Okay. And just so you know, on the plant table, if there's 2 plants in a bag, you take both plants. So extra bonus. All right, you guys ready?
So the new members
Did the new members already get their plants? Oh, okay. Thank you.
All right, first one, last for our 8
Okay, thank you, everybody. So now I'm pleased to bring us to our guest speaker. To better get to know our society, tonight we're going to introduce you to a special project called the Warea area. Dr. Susan Carr has conservation in her genes. Native of Gainesville, Florida, she earned a BS in botany from UF and later a master's degree from Louisiana State University. Her professional career has spanned working with the U.S. Forestry Service and Natural Resources Conservation Service to nonprofits such as the Alachua Conservation Trust, where she currently steers programs to buy and protect land. She is the past president of FMPS, and she's our current treasurer. So let's welcome Dr. Carr.
Is this thing on?
Left or right? All right. Okay. I'm all set. Hello. Good to see everybody in person. I think I was here in 2017 when my career, my Native Plant Society career was just taking off. And now I'm back, so I feel like I'm, kind of back home. Anyhow, and it's been a long few years, and so I'm kind of not used to talking in person. I feel like I did a bunch of Zoom presentations everything for a couple of years, but we all did, right? And we still are. Hello, YouTube world. Like Athena mentioned, I've been with the Native Plant Society for a few years. I am past president and current treasurer on the board, and I work for the Alachua Conservation Trust, my day job, so I snuck that in there. It is a nonprofit land trust, so my employer is a nonprofit, and my board service stuff is nonprofit, so I'm pretty steeped in the nonprofit world. So, but the ACT, Alachua Conservation Trust, is a land trust, and we are, we just try to protect land through all kinds of ways, or facilitate the protection of land. So I'm probably going to talk a lot. So actually, this project is kind of inspiring to me because this is a land conservation project. So, I guess the punchline of all this is the Native Plant Society owns 12 acres in Marion County. So I'm going to tell you a story about that, and how that happened and why. Okay, let's see. This is gonna work. Oh, okay. All right, well, I'm going to start, of course, with the recitation of the mission. Just, I know there's some new people here, and so you can see this is the mission of our society. You can read it. But it kind of boils down to the PCR, I've heard it called: preservation, conservation, restoration of native plant and native plant communities in Florida. So we do a lot of things, and I won't talk about all of them, but I'm going to be sort of in this area, especially the conservation of native plants in Florida. And okay, so, but in my day job, I once started this, I try to protect land. And I guess the guiding principle of land protection in Florida is really this Florida Wildlife Corridor. You guys ever heard of it? Yep. Oh, good. Okay. All right. So the Florida Wildlife Corridor really is a map, it's a vision, and I like to call it the blueprint. And it was made kind of popular over here by these Florida Wildlife Corridor expedition folks who would trek across the wildlands in Florida and make movies about it. I don't know if you guys have seen those. Okay, yeah. So they really made it kind of popular. But over here, this is the the sciencey kind of map. It looks like this. And the concept is that Florida could protect a network of native and rural lands, working lands. So not all just a network of lands that were connected, right? It would better serve wildlife, so sort of wildlife focused, panthers, bears, things that move, things that migrate. The thinking is that this could be more resilient in the face of climate change and all that kind of stuff. So that really is the blueprint right there, that map, in essence. Okay, so, and then this map is a little different, doesn't look like that past map. Remember, the past map is sort of the vision. This is the reality here, where the green areas are public lands, So already protected in various degrees. And then the yellow bits are part of the Florida Forever Florida Forever program. Let me put that. I don't know if have you guys heard of Florida Forever? Yes, good. So Florida Forever is Florida's, I guess, premier land protection program. And so the yellow bits are not protected. It's just where the state has deemed it, these areas important for conservation. Okay. So, a lot of what I do in my day job is trying to protect land in these yellow bits. And even that is not far from connected and everything like the last map, but it's moving in that direction if we could actually protect all that. But my point here is that these kind of the last map or this map, it's very focused on large landscapes, rural landscapes, and a lot of wet areas. You think about it, green swamp, Everglades, the big wet. So anyhow, we boil it down to the driving thing here is big, wild, and connected. Right? That's sort of really what underscores this model. But what about rare plants? What about rare plants in small tracts and fragmented landscapes? Well, they kind of get left out a lot of times. So that's what I'm going to talk about next. Okay, so Florida is a biodiversity hotspot. Or actually, it's a collection of biodiversity hotspots. I don't know if you guys have heard that term, but it's just what it sounds like. It's like where things are, there are a lot of plants or animals even, or rare plants or animals. Florida is just off the chart in terms of endemism for plants. In something that's endemic means it's only from one area, right? I'm endemic to Gainesville. You're only found in one little area. Well, about 11% of Florida's native plants are endemic or near endemic, meaning they're only found in Florida. That's a pretty high percentage. On top of that, Florida just has a lot of native plants. So those two things coupled, the high biodiversity and the high level of endemism, really leads to this hotspot concept. And I put here the species richness. I was looking this up before I came here. Some places say 2,700, some say over 4,000. We don't seem to even really know how many native plants we have exactly because so many are naturalized. Right? So I think about a third of our flora is actually a bunch of recent arrivals. So that's why the broad range there. But you look over here, and so here's a little, you can see the hot spots, and this is kind of a combination of number of plants and number of rare plants, kind of an index. But I throw that in there because it really shows sort of the Western Panhandle is just crazy off the charts, right? All this rare stuff, tons of biodiversity. But over here, we're right in here, right? The central ridges are also hotspots, largely because they have a lot of them. And I don't know if I put in oops, okay, I wish I had it. There, you think about we're on the Brooksville Ridge right now, so it's an ancient dune system from the Pleistocene era or whatever. This is the Lake Wales Ridge, and that's probably the one you hear the most about because it's such a high, by Florida standards, it's a big mountain range. And it basically was a series of islands during the last sea level rise. Yeah. So think about islands, well, that gives plenty of chance for things to evolve to be rare and endemic right around the islands. So that's what happened there. Okay, so we cover sort of why, we have a lot of rare plants. They're in narrow ranges and stuff like that. They also tend to be in dry areas. Uplands with sandy, infertile soils. Probably just like the one we're probably standing on sandy, infertile soils right now, right? So basically uplands like this beautiful sandhill. Well, where do you think development occurs? Sandy, infertile upland soils. So you have now this, where rare plants like to be are probably, in some of the most threatened areas, in terms of land conversion. All right, and so here's the little scary red thing. But here we are with the predictions of where we're going to be in by mid-century. You know, peninsula is just filling up. So red is development, green is conservation lands. This little model here is saying if we didn't do any more conservation in Florida and just went on the trend that we're on now, it would look like this. So you can see it's very heavy in Central Florida, even over here in Citrus County. So, okay. So, yeah. All right, so that's kind of impressive. So Warea and Plexifolia, clasping leaf Warea, kind of checks all of those boxes, right? It's xeric areas, dry sandy soils. It's a narrow endemic. It's only in Central Florida. So it is a federally endangered native plant. That means it's protected by the Endangered Species Act. It's plant, but now remember, plants don't get much protection, in my opinion, under that act. Not nearly as much as endangered animal. Okay. Interestingly, unlike most endangered plants, it's an annual, and it's in the mustard family. So there it is. And these are, well, I should know, saliques or whatever these unusual fruits are that anybody know. The mustard family has these weird little long tentacle kind of fruits. That's a mustard family characteristic. Oops. Okay, and there's the name, the reason for its name, clasping Warea. There's a little leaf right there. It's clasping this down. I think that's what Plexifolia, clasping. Okay, so here it is, right? And this is its whole range in the entire world. Is these 5 counties. That's it, right? And I was trying to show where some of these high ridges are. It's not very good map, but you can see it in this. Even in these 5 counties, it's only going to be in these high areas. Right? So obviously, it's kind of a Pleistocene island kind of thing.
They're not considered fossil plants, right?
Fossil?
Yeah, because they're not that historic. It's just, I mean, like, cookies are fossil plants.
Oh,
They go back
yeah.
further, right?
Yeah, I don't not like like cycads and club mosses and things like that. No. This is a angiosperm. Yeah. All right. So there are only a few populations of this guy anywhere. I don't know, maybe I would count on 2 hands all the populations in the world. And so there's a Warea, there's like really 2 Warea areas. So you might have heard, there's one that's on protected land on Seminole State Forest, which is over in Seminole County, or Lake County, in that area. And so I just dug up these, I've never been there, but this is what Warea looks like in its natural habitat. You can see its little flowering heads there in the matrix of wiregrass and other grasses and forbs in the sandhill system. So that's how I imagine it would look, in natural conditions. Okay, but all right. So to the story of where's the native plants? Well, mainly due to the efforts of Juliette Reiner, our past executive director, who has been with this plant. She left about a year ago, but she worked on this plant a long time. Probably since 2010 or so. And she's been very familiar with this area in Marion County. So now we are southwest of Ocala a little bit, just east, I'm sorry, I'm directionally challenged. Southeast of Ocala and due east of Bellevue, right in here. There's the Ocala National Forest. So we're right here. This is on private land, but it is one of the largest populations of Warea and the most northernmost population of this land. So, people have been keeping an eye on it for years, including Juliette and some other folks. So this is what it looks like in this area. Weirdly enough, this is a I call it like out of a legacy subdivision. It's one of those things where it's been platted, the roads have been installed, but it hasn't really been built out. And I don't really know what happened there. It's getting built out now, but you know, when we started with this, you could drive around and be a house here, one over there, but mostly undeveloped. But it's all been subdivided and everything like that. You see the roads and so on. So I'll just divert to here. So in my day job, we wouldn't touch this with a stick. And do you know why? I mean, these are all a bunch of half-acre, quarter-acre lots. It's been subdivision. There's probably hundreds of owners in here, all this. To me, it's like, it's beyond, there's not much we can do with it, right? It's too divided, it's too fragmented, there are too many owners. You know, we're not gonna make much progress, or we can spend the rest of our lives doing stuff. Now, that sounds pretty grim. But, you know, Juliet was, she was pretty dogged and determined. So she, you know, went and looked for willing seller landowners and all this kind of stuff. And I'll make the points here are known area locations. So people have driven around and taken GPS points and stuff like that. So there's some mapping that's going on here. Well, we found this one 12-acre area that was for sale, or we could buy. Right? 12 acres, not a lot. But more than a quarter-acre, half-acre lot of the rest of the area. So we pursued that, and here's a picture of it. See, it doesn't look as nice and pristine as that other picture I showed, but you know, it's kind of rural. But the Warea are in there. I mean, we drove around there a lot. And just this time of year, it's blooming, and there's just Warea everywhere. Kind of crazy, you know. We're just in this kind of weird subdivision with Warea all over the place. But it's really confined to these more open areas, and a lot of the area is more hardwood, and it does not like shade. So you go back into those oaks and stuff, you're not going to find the area. So it's in the open areas, it's on the roadside, that kind of thing. Okay, so the 12 acres that we pursued looks like this, and it's got road, right away, power line right away and power line right away. Well, guess where that plant is? First of all, there's not a whole lot of it on this 12 acres, but the little bit that there is in these right of ways. Not surprising, you know, it's an open, it's a sun-loving animal, right? So, okay. Well, anyhow, so we had the willing seller, and so we're getting all this stuff. Well, the plot thickens, but and we had to buy it, right? We have to actually purchase it for $75,000 for 12 acres. So we had to get the money. We didn't have $75,000. So this is where this critter comes in. In around in the middle of 2018-ish, we discovered that there are sand skinks on the property. A herpetologist discovered this, and this is a sand skink. It's just that little snake-looking. Didn't y'all have a talk about sand skinks? Okay. Well, a sand skink is a specialized lizard with no legs or anything that swims around. I think there he is right there. He swims in the sand. It's crazy, right? Swims under the sand and makes these like sine wave tracks. And they must have this loose, you know, we have kind of coarse, loose sand around here that a critter like this can swim in. So they are sand swimmers. Well, they're federally threatened. An animal that's federally threatened, you know? Ooh, guess what? There's money to protect them. So there you go. So we found the skink, and that made us eligible for money from the Fish and Wildlife Service as mitigation. So basically, if you protect skink habitat, you're mitigating for all this other horrible stuff that happens elsewhere. The Fish and Wildlife Service maintains a fund for this. It's actually administered by the Nature Conservancy. It's very complicated. And then we asked another foundation, the Felber Foundation, which is a based in Ocala regional foundation, and we cobbled the money together from these sources. So I like to say it's like the little rare endangered plant preserve that was largely paid for by this critter, the sand skink, okay? so my punchline is like, it's only 12 acres, but apparently it's enough for some of these guys to live, and it's enough for some of these guys to live, right? Small. Okay. All right. Okay, so we closed on this in 2019. In fact, I signed the closing statements at the Crystal River Conference. Remember, I was in the back there signing documents. I remember that. I just remembered that on the way over, and that was our last in-person conference before COVID and all that happened. So yeah. Okay, so what next? So we have, there it is, our 12 acres that we're proud. And, not a whole lot has happened since, and we're kind of gearing up now again. But, you don't just buy land and leave it alone. It doesn't really work that way. So we need to manage it. And we've done some management. But we didn't get the money wasn't just free, I guess. We have to do land shall stay in conservation, of course, yeah. But we have management obligations. All right, so what are those? Fire, hardwood reduction. We really want to, we were just on a meeting with the Fish and Wildlife Service a couple weeks ago. They said, you just got to get these oaks down. You just got to get them down. And then we're not even in a condition to burn yet. So we need to do some hardwood control, try to get fire in there. And this is now, this isn't, out in the wildlands. This is like burning in a neighborhood. So monitoring the plants, we're going to head out there, I think, in a couple of weeks and try to, look around, see what we can see. And maybe outplanting Bach Tower is working a lot with this plant. So maybe we can use this site as an outplanting area. Okay, so now the story gets even kind of crazier. Remember those rights of way that I pointed out? Duke Energy. Okay, so Duke Energy. Now they've gotten real interested in this area because they've got power lines all over this place, and they got Warea and sand skinks all up in their right of way. But they've taken the signage to heart, and they've put up all these signs. This just happened. So there you have little no herbiciding. The big thing is please do not herbicide these rights of way where there's Warea, right? And so far they've said, sure, no problem. But we got to make sure, that gets to the ground, to the guys on the ground, because it doesn't always, work out like you want it to. So we are working with Duke on this now, and so far so good. Another partner, Putnam Land Conservancy, which is another land trust like the one I work for. They continue to actually seek land acquisition opportunities in this, subdivision, including even the small parcels, quarter-acre lots, half-acre lots. They receive a lot of things by donation. They actually, it doesn't show up on these maps, but they're, a lot of these lots are still vacant. So they're trying to buy or acquire vacant lots that have Warea on them. And interestingly, I was at a Warea working group about a few months ago, and there were several people who live here at that working group that are really interested in this plant. And and then of course, Deb Curry, I guess you guys know her, she's heading up the Big Scrub chapter, and they do a lot of monitoring and surveys. And so it's pretty interesting. So it really is, a group effort. It's kind of one of these interesting stories of a multi-stakeholder partnership, working on a common goal in a pretty small area, pretty focused area. So here's all the players, Bach Tower, I mentioned, even Marion County now has gotten involved. And this is Juliet there leaning over some Warea. And both these people have moved on. That's Joe Pringer. He was our Fish and Wildlife Service, guru guy when we were doing the acquisition. So, okay, so that's it about Warea. That's my whole story. I just really wanted to touch on, because the Native Plant Society, in my opinion, does fill this niche of doing small-scale conservation and education, specifically on plants. And I would argue that maybe this Warea areas might be the only preserve in the state, I'm not sure about that, that is really set up strictly for an endangered plant. But I wanted to just very briefly mention another program that we have. Terea Keepers is the name of it. And here again, this is up in the Panhandle, a very, very narrowly restricted tree. And I believe this is Florida's only endangered tree. This is the Terea Taxifolia. It's a long story, but basically it's suffering from loss of habitat, but more so it's affected by a fungus. So it's kind of like an American chestnut kind of story. And it's killed most of the adults. There are lots of little saplings and seedlings around, but you know, it has a lot of problems. It was also hit by Hurricane Michael really hard. So the Native Plant Society is working with Atlanta Botanical Garden, who they're doing a lot of ex situ work on this tree. But we're handling kind of the field part of it. So this is Lily Anderson Messick. She actually works for the Native Plant Society, and she's heading up this effort to educate a lot of these plants are on private lands up in Liberty County and Gadsden County. So she's doing a big landowner outreach to reach all these private landowners, get on their property if they allow her to, and her crew, and survey for Terea trees and map them. And I don't have the data, but I understand that they've doubled the amount of known population because of that effort. So that's really cool. And this just shows that this terrain, this has actually been pretty hurricane affected, but this is a very kind of a steep, very different than here. There are a lot of steep ravines and so on up in that part of the state. So these people have to crawl up and down these steep slopes. Okay, so that's it. Just a couple, stories and projects I wanted to share about how the society works on small-scale conservation for rare plants. And questions? I'd love questions if you have any. Yes, ma'am.
When did you say it blooms?
Right now? Yeah. I haven't been out there yet, but yeah, right about Labor Day. So that would be, yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Is the property in Marion County is there a place that the public can see it, and is it one in Marion County?
I guess you could go to this 12 acres if you could find it. You could email me. You could go into this neighborhood and just drive around and see it.
I was gonna try to arrange a field trip. If we want, is there interest in the room to go to the field trip? Okay, because we may not see that much. I mean, there's just a handful. That's why I wanted to know when it was blue.
Yeah. I haven't been out there this year, so I don't have a good feel for. It's also because it's an annual, it's sort of like, here today, gone next year, Yes, ma'am.
Is it near towns? I mean, my family's from Lake Weir area,
Oh.
Alachua.
Yeah, it's real near there, I think. Let me see if I can get back to the map. I think it's very near Weirsdale. Wait a minute.
We have the lady that's got the lady nursery over there.
She closed, but yeah, fair. She was just north of the village.
Yeah, I know that. My dad.
Okay. Isn't Weirsdale or Alachua right there? Okay. Yeah, it's real close. I think it's Silver Shores. Yeah, that's the name of the subdivision. I didn't bring, I wish I have a LiDAR image that this is just very high elevation. Yeah. So.
Now, on the map that you showed, close-up of the site,
Yeah.
there was that density on the right-hand side. Is that something that might be able to be acquired? Is that just something, no? Because I mean, there's a lot of plants.
That's mainly because there was a lot of searching. This is, I think her name is Barbara Edenhofer. I think she's a Native Plant Society. They have this 20 acres, and I don't think they're going to sell it or anything, but they got real interested, and they actually manage 4 Warea, and they got a cost share agreement to help them
reduce, especially in this little strip. I went out there once.
So
So,
that's probably kind of protected area.
yeah, I mean, then people die and their kids do stuff. Yeah.
It's a state planning month.
Yeah, right. Leave your Warea to us. Yeah. But no, I have another map that shows really, if you look at what we're doing, we bought this, but we're working with this landowner here. And then there's several other little tiny bits. So it's bigger. I just didn't have the map. So
Locks and dam in this area.
I think it's down. So, huh.
The dam's farther up.
Yeah, the river. This is that restoration area though that's owned by the Water Management District. Sunny Hill. I think that's Sunny Hill. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Oh, that's way up here. Yeah. Putnam County. Yeah.
Because we still have property in Alachua.
Oh, okay. Maybe you have some Warea. Yes, ma'am.
You're talking about land management, including control birds.
Mm-hmm.
But there's that slinky lizard thing.
Yeah.
Wouldn't skink, yeah. Wouldn't that threaten them?
Oh, no. They're under the ground. They're fine. So, but more than, I don't know. It might burn up one. I maybe, but more importantly, the fire maintains the habitat that it needs. It really needs open habitat. And if you burn, you kind of knock the hardwoods back. So,
Because it'll burn the forest, but it's not gonna burn the sandy stuff.
right. Yeah. This mineral sand doesn't really burn. There's not any organic matter in it much. So,
Yeah, they've done research that about under 2 inches, very little temperature, it's felt under the ground.
yeah. But it's a good question because, it's like gopher tortoises, right? In fact, I think these critters evolved to live under the ground because they're in these frequent fire systems. So you think about a gopher tortoise, a fire comes, they just shoot down their burrow and they're fine. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's natural selection, right? Any other questions? Oh, thank you. Thank you. Oh, just on society business stuff, I did want to say we do have a new executive director. Do you guys know this? Her name is Linda Davis. She's been on post for a couple months, and I really hope she comes over here. Invite her sometime. She's very interesting. So I'm really excited because we were without an executive director for a long time. Too long. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you, Susan. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure to get back together with you guys. And if you don't have any questions that have come up, then we can adjourn the meeting. All right. Thank you. Have a good night, guys.